Hi, it's Sherry at Savvy Business Resolutions with another episode of Investing in Conversation, Conflict Management for Managers. Last time, we were talking about technology as an attention barrier and a bridge. This time, I'll bust a myth. Ivan Newman will get me to speak from experience, and I'll give you a tip on a very human obstacle and opportunity. Before we go any further, a warning. No, it's all right. I'm not going to start swearing at you. But those of an insensitive disposition might want to cover their ears. You see, we're going to be talking about feelings. Yeah, all that pink fluffy stuff. That brings me to this week's myth. I'm not prejudiced. Well, okay, confession time. Actually, I am. And so are you. Yeah, I know prejudice is an ugly word. It's strongly associated with hate, isn't it? But taken literally, it's just prejudgment. And that is something we all do, often before we're even aware of it. It's said that we form our impressions of a new acquaintance within 7 seconds. And one of the first questions we ask in that very, very short time frame is, are you one of us or one of them? As Dr. Graham Music of the Tavistock Centre explains, that's embedded in our evolution.
We're a very parochial species. We evolved for a long time, many tens of thousands of years, in small hunter-gatherer communities where we had to bond and be very, very close to our group, but you often had to be very suspicious of people who are outside your group. And so in that situation, when the outsider might have been a danger and a threat, it didn't make that much sense to be too empathic to them. And so we developed a whole range of almost dehumanizing people, making them not like us, not quite human. And that will then get exaggerated in the form of prejudice against people, for example, who might speak differently, wear different clothes, have different skin color, have different attitudes, eat different food, all of those sorts of things, or just live in different places or have different lifestyles. Tribalism will always exist. It's part of human nature.
Yeah.
And it's probably had a huge role in our survival as a species. But certainly, I think for some people, some of the boundaries have not just changed, but loosened a little bit. So we're much less likely to, if we think about attitudes towards homosexuality or people from different cultural groups or people with different skin colours, for example, I think we're much more likely to be less prejudiced against them.
Technology has played a role in loosening those boundaries, but it also creates echo chambers, of course, when it draws people together who share a prejudice. Discrimination is one of the top 5 reasons for claims to employment tribunals. The truth is, attitudes come from a deep-rooted mix of influences. I was reminded of that a few weeks ago when I watched the Netflix series Adolescence. Have you seen it? It's a tough watch, but very thought-provoking. And it came to mind again around Easter, when the theme of that show was in the news. One of the biggest teaching unions was calling for action to deal with an increase in misogyny by young boys against female staff, which they blamed on elements of social media. I mentioned that on a business pod because, as I said on the blog, today's students are tomorrow's staff, aren't they? The issue of discrimination ties back to last week's show because it links in to what Michael Prue was saying about the limited nature of our attention resources. There's so much more information coming at us every day than we can actually process. And often that information is unclear or incomplete. But our brains like patterns. They like things to make sense. So they will use whatever they have to hand to make that happen. If you look at a physical image from far enough away, you can't see the fine detail, can you? So you have to identify it based on the broader features. Well, the same is true across what I call relational distance. If you can't see the fine detail of who another person is, your attention switches to the groups you think they belong to. So then you draw on everything you know or think you know about those groups. The less detail you have, the broader the category is going to be, and the further from the individual. Go far enough and you end up with a stereotype. On the blog, I'll tell you about my experiences at both sides of that great divide, which taught me the quickest way to get across it is conversation, especially the kind that builds a human bridge which doesn't just span the gap, it actually allows us to meet in the middle and turn one of them into one of us. I'm talking about empathy. Yep, here comes the pink fluffy stuff. I first came across Graham Music when he wrote a book on this subject. So when we met, of course, I asked him to define it and to sort out the confusion with other words it tends to be mixed up with.
I think you have to understand what somebody else is thinking and feeling, particularly feeling, and you have to be able to feel with them to an extent. So it's feeding into their state of mind of being to an extent, which is a different kind of understanding from understanding it cognitively. Pity is different, I think, because although you have to have some sense that somebody else is suffering, I think we often in pity come from a slightly more patronising place. We're sort of helping these poor souls who we pity.
Yeah, we're up there looking down at them.
And so I don't think that feels quite so comfortable to be on the receiving end. I think sympathy is more offering some, for example, if somebody has died and you want to show some sympathy or something bad has happened, you're showing that you care.
Yes.
You might not always understand it from the inside in quite the same way. It's just got slightly different connotation.
Sure. It's a little more distant, isn't it?
Slightly less depth, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
So in empathy, I think the metaphor I often use is it's a bit like if somebody's stuck in a ditch in an awful place. It's not very helpful if I'm standing on the outside of the ditch looking down at them and waving.
And going, oh dear, you poor soul.
Exactly. That's more like pity.
Yes.
Whereas it's possible that I might jump into the ditch and then we'll have two distressed people down there. That's not going to help either.
That's no use. No.
So we need really to have a sort of 1 foot in and 1 foot out and be holding their hand with an idea that we might be able to show them there's a place outside that they can come out to.
As Graham says, empathy is a much misunderstood and underappreciated management tool.
If I'm a manager, I'll be much more successful if I'm empathic as well as a boundary and strong boss, as it were, than if I'm purely a
you're purely enforcing the rules kind of thing.
That doesn't work so well.
Interesting that you say about management, because there are plenty of managers who believe that if they empathise with their staff, they're going to look soft.
Yes, that makes sense. And I think we're living increasingly in a culture which believes that management should be strong and tough. And people are very, very fearful of these softer parts of the personality. Now, you're not going to be a good manager if all you do is empathise.
No.
Of course, you need to make decisions. You need to ensure that people do what they're supposed to be doing. You need to be canny in whatever it is that you've got to get done. But nonetheless, with empathy for your people that you're managing, you're much more likely to get the best out of them because they will feel motivated and cared for.
Yes.
And they will feel that somebody's interested in them. And that is a huge, huge motivator.
It's definitely an essential dispute resolution and conflict management tool. As a mediator, it's what allows me to see the situation from the perspective of everybody around the table while staying independent. This mix of emotion and cognition, skill and ability is invaluable when you're dealing with any kind of conflict at work. But it also creates positive experiences. A while ago, I read that bad manners can spread through an office faster than flu. That's probably true, isn't it? But empathy is infectious as well. Graham again.
I think people feel heard and listened to, and it makes them feel very, very different about themselves when they empathise with. And lots of research suggests, for example, that when you empathise with, you tend to like yourself and the other person more, but also you tend to then do better things for other people. So, for example, if I'm empathised with, I'm much more likely, if I see somebody on the street looking in trouble, I'm much more likely to go and help them.
We might like to think of business as being, well, all about thinking, but it's at least as much about feeling when it comes down to it. I mean, relationships run through absolutely everything we do. They build the best teams. They keep customers coming back and recommending us to other people. They build the best supply deals. Back in the dark days of the COVID lockdowns, I heard some amazing stories about businesses that were able to help each other survive and even thrive because of the relationship between customer and supplier. If you think about it, whatever we do, we want to inspire a feeling in the people that deal with us, don't we? Whether it's reassurance, security, aspiration, whatever your business does, on some level, you do feelings. Ivan Newman demonstrated that on his Living Inside the Brand series, and he did it by turning the tables on me.
Have you bought anything in the last few weeks that's given you tremendous pleasure?
Oh, yes. A pair of shoes that I bought just because I wanted them.
Do you not have any shoes now?
Oh, look, I'm Mrs. Average British Woman. I've got a wardrobe full of shoes. I just didn't have any quite like these.
Well, what are these shoes like that are so different?
Well, they're black lace, actually, and they've got reasonably high heels. And when I saw them, I just knew I had to have them.
How did they make you feel when you saw them in the shop?
Well, to be honest, I went out not quite knowing what I was after. I mean, I knew roughly the type of thing I wanted. I knew I wanted something dressy that I could wear on an evening out, but that was about it. But as soon as I walked into the shop and I spotted these, I thought, they're the ones. I don't know why. They just are, and I'm buying them.
When you tried them on, how did you feel?
Unfortunately, they didn't have my size, actually. Trouble was, by the time I knew that, they were already my shoes. See, they'd spoken to me. They'd said, take us home. You have to buy us. Then I was told I couldn't have them.
And the assistant in the shop, how did they make you feel?
Oh, she was very good. I mean, as my face was falling to the floor and I was wrestling with the prospect of having to put my shoes back and walk away, she said, oh, look, I probably could get you the right size. Can you hang on a minute? So obviously I said yes. I mean, I hung on to the shoes that were too big just in case. But she disappeared for a couple of minutes, and when she came back, she said, yes, Southend had them in my size if I could pick them up in the next 7 days. Obviously, I said, I can, I'll do it. I got a friend to do it because she was in the area, and to be honest, when she brought them in and I opened the box, I was a little bit scared because I thought, what if, after all this, they don't fit? But they did, and I had exactly what I wanted.
Tell me how you felt physically. What were these shoes doing for you now that you had them on in your house?
Oh, they just made me feel dressed up. You know, I felt taller, I felt slimmer, and that sort of thing's important to us girls. And I just wanted to get glammed up there and then and go out.
So you yearned after those shoes, Sherry, and that's the point of the conversation. You yearned for those shoes, you bought them, you hadn't even tried them on, you got them home, you said they talked to you.
They did.
Sounds as though those shoes, that shop, that assistant, a good combination of people and things giving you a fabulous, fabulous brand experience.
It was. The first time I wore them, actually, was for my book launch. And I must admit, I picked out what I was going to wear, partly on the basis that it would go with the shoes, because I was wearing those things come hell or high water.
Which just goes to show, Sherry, that you bought for emotional reasons.
I certainly did.
So there we are, QED.
So how does that tie back to customer service exactly? I mean, are we talking here about the customer service in the shop, which, as I've said, was very good, or are we talking about the manufacturer, kind of a broader version of customer service, the manufacturer producing something that I absolutely had to buy? Which one are we dealing with?
We're talking about both. Yes, you might have bought those shoes in any case, but had the actual assistant been less patient, less helpful, you may well have walked out thinking, I wish I could have had those shoes, but they didn't have them in my size. Damn it. So we are talking about the whole all-round experience. There has to be a terrific interaction between the people and the potential customer, and also the products and the potential customer. The one without the other is like a cherry without a stone. It just makes no sense at all.
So, on that basis, what's your final do-today tip?
My final do-today tip is for any business to go and do a little bit of mystery shopping in with their competitors and indeed in with themselves. Go and sample the customer service, the all-round customer service, the product plus the people that your competitors offer and that you offer. And as far as possible, be objective about yourself and indeed about your competitor, so that you can see the extent to which your customers actually yearn for the products, enjoy the service, enjoy the interaction, and go out with a smile on their face and a spring in their step.
I've still got those shoes and I still love them. My tip this week is possibly going to make you slightly uncomfortable, but believe me, it is well worth doing. I've done it myself and it is well worth it. And it is to confront your own prejudices. I know, don't run away. No, stay where you are. If you can become aware of them, they become a whole lot easier to manage. I'm not saying you're going to change what you think and what you feel, but you will be able to manage them and stop them causing trouble. And also, you will be much better placed to empathise with other people's prejudices. You don't have to agree with them and you may not change their view. It just means that you can understand them from that other person's perspective. And that makes it a whole lot easier to prevent discrimination within your organisation. More generally, empathy builds better collaboration, more diversity, and all those things feed into a healthier workplace. On the face of it, discrimination is no laughing matter. Now, I know that. But here's an example from my own experience, which always makes me want to laugh. It was so ridiculous. Even at the time, I had a job not to laugh out loud.
I met the lady who I would be working for, and she said that she was also training as a legal exec. She was a couple of years ahead of me, and we got on very, very well. And then she said, the senior partner wants to meet you. So the lady came in, and I stood up, put out my hand to shake hands, as you do, and she missed.
No.
And then stood there and went, oh, I see, you want to shake hands. I thought you were groping.
What?
I've never groped in my life. So, you know, at 22 as I was then, I still wasn't terribly confident. Good at putting on a front. I could put on a front with the best of them. But, I mean, she described me as aggressively confident, but that was because it was all front and no substance. So I thought, oh, my God. So we sat down and the girl who became my boss said to her boss, oh, you know, it's fine. She said, you know, you spend a few minutes with Sherry and you'll forget about the sight issue. Oh, she said, I couldn't possibly forget. Oh, no, I couldn't possibly forget. Oh, her first thing was she walked in and said, oh, they told me in reception there was a lady with a blind dog. And I just about resisted the temptation to say, God, I hope not. I want to get home, you know. but that's quite a common...
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, so we sat there and she said to me, senior partner, a little bit later in the interview, she said, who sets your typewriter up for you? Well, I found that a bit patronising because, you know, I'd been typing for a living. I've been typing since I was 11, actually. If I couldn't set a typewriter up, I couldn't do anything. So I said, oh, I do. So she said, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's marvellous. 5 minutes later, now, about the future, about going to court. Have you got a car? Do you drive?
Yeah. Well thought through.
Yep. So I was quite nervous at this stage. And I thought, I'm not even sure I want this job, so I've got nothing to lose. So I looked down at my dog. It was my first dog at the time. Looked down at her and I said, no, I said, I've been trying to teach the dog, but she's not having it. At which point, my future boss stifled a giggle, looked at her boss and said, see, I told you you'd forget. And she said, I didn't forget at all, which just compounded the whole
The issue, yeah.
I'm glad the world's moved on in the last 35 years. At least I hope it has. On that note, I will wish you a peaceful and productive week, and I'll talk to you next time. If you need help with any aspect of conflict management at work, come and talk to me. All my details are on the website, savvybusinessresolutions.com.